Okay, everyone, thank you for joining us live once again for our ongoing reading of our ministry's book written by Andy Young and I, The Church Lie and the Biblical Alternative. And in order to stay on track today, I'll just go ahead and let's go ahead and turn this off right here. I'll go ahead and read from my introduction that I posted today by way of introduction. So we are doing a daily reading through the Church Lie and the Biblical Alternative, but not to make it boring like, just reading the book to you, which you can read for free online. Go to our ministry hub, tank.online, TANC.online. And there we have our ministry hub where you can find where you may buy the Church Lie online and read the hard copy, perfect bind for yourself. Right now we're out of the spiral binds, but we can get those ordered quickly in if need be. Also looking for our free online library on the hub, you can also read the Church Lie for free online. And as I put in the introduction here, and down here at the very end of the Potter's House compound, the headquarters here in Xenia, Ohio for Tank Ministries, we have this one room that's totally out of everybody's way down at the end of the facility. And so due to the fact that this was an old church that we renovated and has had several additions, this down on this end was part of the addition that kind of doesn't have any central HVAC. So we have these nice space heaters down here that are kind of doing the job on this very frigid minus 30 here in Xenia, Ohio, with the wind chill factors, which was the last I heard. The heater's doing very nice down here, but as you can see, I still kind of need a coat. All right, but at any rate, so we're doing this ongoing reading and spicing it up a little bit with what is trending in Churchland, which is, I mean, every day it's something new. And like I have said yesterday and today, a lot of it's just so rich and points to what this ministry's been saying for years, that the temptation was to take out of my schedule and post vids and additional articles about these issues and how they point to what we've been saying for years. The only problem is we've written something just article-wise, we've written something over 4,000 articles on these issues, not including our conferences and books written and everything else. And I continually found myself saying, even though I was taking the time to write this article about it or do a vid, that's chapter such and such in the book. Okay, we cover that in the book. So since the Church Lie is kind of like our ministry focal point right now, I figured I'd do the writing and integrated into our reading of the Church Lie and the way it addresses all of these issues is go ahead and integrate what's trending in Churchland right now along with our reading, okay? So there were 2 or 3 things that I can integrate in today as a matter of getting our Boxcast session for today going, which will be, this is our second one in many, and we'll be doing one, tomorrow and Friday. And then next week, due to the fact that I will be in nursing school, the schedule will probably change a little bit, but I do still plan on having them daily, okay? So the one thing, as you can see, that I integrated in today was this trailer for this new movie coming up, Breakthrough, that is about this young boy, true story and everything, and this is a family that goes to church, and that's integrated into the narrative. And of course, their church life is presented in the movie as just some, hunky-dory, Mayberry RFD, type of narrative concerning the church that they go to. And so there's this miracle, and here is why I'm the miracle Scrooge on this movie. We had one comment on the blog today, and I'll go ahead and read it because it's going to coincide somewhat closely with what I'm going to say. We have Argo commenting here, I guess the millions of Christians who never got their children back just didn't have enough faith, or God didn't care about them because, he said, because reasons. All right, and that may be short because of various and sundry reasons, who knows what, it's a mystery, whatever. And then he made a comment about the music, which I didn't pay much attention to, and then why the music at warp factor 10. Soaring music must means you're really, really spiritual, I guess. So we'll throw that comment in there as well. Yes, okay, yes. Even though I'm happy that there's one less dead person in the world and that this guy came back, Houston, we have a problem, okay? Houston, we have a problem. And people jump on these, narratives emotionally and throw any kind of critical thinking to the wind, or as I put in the comments, you throw it overboard, with prejudice. So what is my problem with this? Well, okay, so if this movie is an endorsement for God directly, okay, I don't have a problem with it. But let's tell it like it is. This is an endorsement for church, okay? Yes, in the movie it's God this and God that, and you bring people in. Oh my goodness, I don't believe in God, but what am I to say about this miracle? Blah, 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 blah. The whole thing with it being about God is wholly disingenuous and just outright deceptive. What is being endorsed here is church, okay? And that's my problem with it. And church is a lie for all the reasons we're going to review in the reading, okay? Church is a lie. Do I want to expound on that first point more, or park there a little bit? could articulate a little bit more by saying that, per the usual, this is just another movie used to make church and church membership absolutely synonymous with a relationship with God. Okay, and that's my problem with it. It's a church promotion, and church is a lie. Okay? Well, Paul, don't the churches do good things? Well, so do secular institutions. And remember, church is a secular institution. Okay? And I think I made another comment that on Paul's passing thoughts today that kind of articulates this well. I did another quickie little post here. Let's back up here. Okay, out of comments. Yes, on this wise, I can comment on this other post that I made today that is a screenshot of what I posted on Twitter, and this is interesting. We have Franklin Graham calling out the Catholic Church to excommunicate Governor Cuomo for passing this law or signing into this law the abortions in regard to the third trimester abortions, all right? And the marquee statement by him out of this newsflash is, if the church loses their moral voice, then what's the use? Now remember, Franklin Graham is a Protestant, all right? And he's calling on the Catholic Church to do this excommunication because Cuomo is a Catholic. Interesting, isn't it? Actually, by Franklin Graham calling out the Catholic Church to do this, he is in essence also putting up his hand and saying, the Catholic Church is a legitimate representation of, salvific representation of God on earth. Basically, what is being called for, according to church orthodoxy, when he's calling for this is orthodoxy, whether Catholic or Protestant. Let's full stop here. What is Franklin Graham actually calling for here? And church speak is so couched in nuance and soft terms. Okay? Full stop here. Technically, what is Franklin Graham calling for here? He's calling for the Catholic Church to take away Governor Cuomo's salvation. That's what's being called for here. Because Cuomo didn't fulfill God's true purpose for governing, which is to, here again, full stop, orthodoxy, okay? Whether you're Catholic or whether you're Protestant, full stop. This is church orthodoxy. Cuomo has not fulfilled his God-given purpose as a governor to enforce church orthodoxy. The 10 Commandments, okay? Thou shalt not kill. Therefore, the church should take away his salvation. This is the way it worked for thousands of years until America came along. Okay? And invoked laws that have the moralism of the Bible, no doubt about it, but primarily invoked what is evident to mankind. Okay? You know, America says this should be against the law. Kumo shouldn't do it because it circumvents the God-given right of an unborn baby to have life, pursue life, and happiness, okay, and have the freedom to do that, okay? This is just classic. I mean, you can take the country, you can take the boy out of the country, but you just can't take the country out of the boy, all right? Church, whether Catholic or Protestant, was created in a church state and for the express purpose of a church state, okay? And even though America came along and caused all kinds of confusion by integrating Enlightenment ideas and principles into religion, and that's why you have all of this confusion, you know, what Franklin Graham is in essence saying here is that the church needs to take away this guy's salvation because he's not properly enforcing church orthodoxy, which in their eyes is God's mandate for government. Okay? And of course, all of these people would deny this unequivocally, but it's the way they function. Enter Mike Huckabee, pretty decent patriot. I like the guy, nice guy. But listen to what comes out of his mouth from time to time. And I quote, God's law is higher than man's law. Whoa! Whoa! Okay? Where does this mentality come from? Straight out of church orthodoxy, which again was created in a church state and for the express purpose of a church state. Okay? And Paul, you're like, Paul, talk more about that. No, it's in the book. We cover all of this stuff in the book in depth, and that's why we're doing the reading here. Okay. Now, back to the movie before we get into our reading. Okay, back to the movie. All right, so what's my second problem with the movie? Okay, what's my second problem with the movie? Well, Argo touched on it. Okay, there's all kinds of problems here. What of the many women who did pray that God would bring their child back, and apparently God didn't answer that prayer? Well, what about them? Okay, so God is only great when he does answer prayers like that, and we should then take that narrative and use that to point at any thinking person is going to say, yeah, okay, I can attribute that to God, but what does that say to God? Because apparently God picks and chooses which one of those prayers, he's going to answer, and what makes that woman any better than any other woman, or her love for her son any greater or lesser than any other love. So God doesn't answer these prayers in other cases. Why? I contend to you that God answered this particular woman's prayer because she goes to church. Okay? At the very least, that's the inference, if that's the right word. Okay? And it offends me. It offends me. Okay? So, what do I think? And not only that. Here's a third thing. Houston. Here is another Houston. We have a problem. There's events like this that happen all the time in what I'll call the secular realm, where church folk and Churchland and what's trending in church isn't anywhere in the narrative. I read some article about a guy who was actually at a funeral home and was being attended to by staff, and the guy sat up on the gurney. Okay, and about caused the guy that was in the room that worked for the funeral home to literally die of a heart attack. Okay, yeah, so what else could this be attributed to? All right, well, what would be wrong with pointing to God? And you know, in the movie, you've got these doctors saying, there's no medical explanation for this, blah, blah, blah. So what? There's not a medical explanation for a lot of stuff that goes on. I work in nursing facilities. There aren't any medical explanations for what goes on, you know, in those things. Now, you know, I have experienced medical miracles in my own life. I have experienced things that were beyond the normal, and I'm not going to get into those stories right now. You know, my son was healed, okay, of a serious thing, and the doctor, it's kind of funny, the doctor looked at the x-rays, and he was like, wow, okay. And then he looked at the old x-rays and the newest x-rays, and he goes, I don't know, but it's all good. We're done here. Have a nice day. Awesome. And he just moved on. I think some doctors realize that there just aren't any explanations for these things that they know of. So, what's the possibility here? Because God is great, because God is unlimited, what He creates is also, creation in and of itself is a miracle. I don't know that science thoroughly understands the whole process of how babies are made. I mean, you start getting into cell study and learning about cells and stuff, and there's some pretty, just the science behind what's going on with cells in your body could explain something like this. Okay? So, why can't we point to God, and in fact this is what the Bible does, why can't we point to the greatness of God in what He is so great and He is so unlimited that whatever He creates is also miraculous and unlimited? Why can't we point to this being a miracle that's come out of the way God creates things? That still gives God the glory. And even though it doesn't thoroughly explain why it happens in some cases and doesn't happen in other cases, it's a much better explanation that is equally subjective in all of this thing, to where attributing it to, God choosing to do it as opposed to not doing it in other cases just brings up more questions, okay? Especially about the character of God. Now, look, when Catholicism ruled the day, everybody agrees that we were in a church dark age, okay, or the Dark Ages, during the reign of the Catholic Church. Look, when Protestantism came about, it was just another version of the Dark Age, all right, just another version. We're still in a dark age, trust me. Not technically, not in regard to science and all this. America and the Enlightenment fixed that, okay? So like when religion was in charge of thinking, yeah, dark age, total dark age. When the Enlightenment made a separation between reality and religion, things started getting better, and then, America came along and, injected that with a lot of energy, okay? So, in the secular realm, no. But in regard to theology in the church, folks, we're still in a huge dark age, okay? So what do I attribute this miracle to? I don't know. Because I think we've got a lot of thinking and learning to do in regard to these things to make it fit with real reality. So I'm saying I don't know. But here's what I do know. I know that it's wrong to take that event and use it to endorse church, okay? Because what people do, they focus on that, and it's like some kind of pardon for everything that's going on in church and ever has gone on in church, all right? It totally gives church a pass on how its ideology from the beginning has borne out its evil fruits. Okay? And of course, in the book, in the 11th chapter, we just don't diss church and deconstruct all of the presuppositions that there are about church. We give an alternative, right? And there is an alternative. And if you want to read a lot more about that alternative, study the book of Acts. Now, it's true. Church history is truly church history. Okay? Church comes along 4th century. All right? We go into that in the book. Church comes along 4th century. All right? Church history is truly church history. The true history of the boring everyday lives of home fellowship networks or the Assembly of Christ, okay, is obscure history, if not altogether absent, okay? You're talking layman that during those times, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th century, you had to be a person of means to get stuff published and to really get your ideas out there, okay? True ecclesia history is very obscure. But again, we point back to the veracity, if that's a good word, of the Bible, or the greatness of the Bible, or the awesomeness of the Bible. The book of Acts is probably the only ecclesia history we have. Okay? Everything else is, in fact, church history. Okay? And you'll hear a lot of discussion amongst churchians in Churchland about historical precedent. Okay? Historical precedent. We've been accused of, this ministry has been accused of, quote, going against hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, of church precedent. Okay? If you're a Catholic, thousands. If you're, even if you're Protestant, thousands, because, of course, they link church history to the book of Acts, which is a lie, and again, we go into that in the book. All right? Fact of the matter is, and even though we had some things, some fundamental things wrong when I wrote this book, okay, even though we had some fundamentals wrong, this is a very good, the facts in this book about the Protestant resurgence that started in the 1970s and it has all but taken over the evangelical church and is getting into Catholic churches and every church you can name. All right? Even though we had some things wrong, this is the only definitive, true history of the Protestant resurgence that began in 1970 that I know of. The rest is propaganda and the rewriting of, the actual true history. All right? So, The Truth About New Calvinism, Volume 1. We'll get to Volume 2 and the rest of the volumes in one of these years. But suffice to say that the organization or the theological think tank, i.e. the Australian Forum, and this is just a fact documented in this book, they go to the brain trust of Protestantism in 1976, between 1976 and 1978. They go to Westminster Seminary and talk to the brain trust of Protestantism at Westminster Theological Seminary and explain to them what the Protestant Reformation or the Protestant soteriology really was in the beginning. They didn't know. As late as 1976, 1978, the Protestant brain trust at Westminster Seminary had no clue what Luther and Calvin and the rest of the Reformation crew taught about soteriology. So then these yahoos, shove this historical precedent in your face. And that is the one thing that Andy and I didn't address in this book, but will be addressed in the second edition. And I have another book, which I'm not going to, and the reason I'm not going to mention is I'm in the process of editing the book False Reformation, okay? But there is a chapter in the book False Reformation, and that book's not available right now. And I know we didn't put it in our free online library either, because we've done a lot of learning since then, and the book needs to be edited and revised, okay? But chapter 9 of that book is a great chapter on how when the Australian Forum comes along, which was behind the Protestant resurgence, okay, that we know today as the New Calvinist movement, They basically come and inform the Protestant brain trust of what Protestantism really is. And I go all into how that called, what I called in the chapter, the Calvinist Civil War, so on and so forth. Okay? So, historical precedent, a joke. Okay? Until until just before 1980, the Protestant brain trust in this country had no clue whatsoever what authentic Protestant soteriology was. And then they want to talk about historical precedent. Ridiculous. Okay, now, so what we'll do at this point, I'll check and make sure, see if we have any comments or whatnot. Alright. And then basically what we'll do is check Facebook here real quick. And we're going to look for input from people, okay, before we get back into our readings, okay. Looks like we might have a couple exchanges. Becky is waving at you. Hi, Becky. Okay, how do you do the wave thing, okay? Becky, she's my new friend. I'll write her something real quick. Hi, Becky. Doing a live vid right now. Thanks for being my friend on Facebook. Exclamation mark. Let's spell friend correctly. Get that done. Try that. Spell Becky correctly. And then I know I can trust Andy to ask her to join our Facebook page, the Churchland. Okay. So let's see what else we might have here. I think Andy chimed in here, okay? And so like if you want to chime in during our live video, and this thing's not cooperating here. Where's my, there it is. Okay, let's go up here. Let me see here. If and Andy is chiming in, let's get to that. If church is the people, then why do they all want 501c3 exemptions? People don't get those, only institutions, right? And look, church is an institution, and church is an institution. A family isn't an institution, okay? A family should be organized, but it's not an institution. Now look, there is a lot of bemoaning and carrying on in Churchland among churchians about all of the compromise going into the church, and I commented on Facebook on this earlier. Look, any institution, no matter what it is, must be fed. Institutions, okay, cannot live and will die unless they're fed with the money from culture and society. Invariably, church as an institution, has to find its survival in being supported by the culture. There's no way around that. And that's why you can't deny that it's an institution. Now, in my title today, I said something about this awful thing I've said about this wonderful movie that's coming up, about this miracle, and certainly I don't like God and reject His awesomeness and His miracles, which isn't true, because I don't like that movie. And is this not another thing? Anybody who speaks out against this movie is speaking out against church and God. Okay? As Phil Johnson said, Paul Dosey hates the church, and I touched on that yesterday. Okay? Well, I might hate the church, but I don't hate God. I love God. God is my Father. Jesus Christ is my brother. And I can't wait for the day when I go to heaven and am in loving, perfect way and not falling short of love for God and the Son and everybody else in heaven, and whatever I'm doing up there, I will be not falling short in love in any way, shape, or form. Okay? And I totally lost my train of thought to where I was going, but I was on the institution thing. Oh, and okay, so like, I've got the freedom to just tell it the way it is, because you know what? If you come to our home fellowship, this household that we consider God's household, okay, and as an expression of God's real household, all right, and you might try reading the New Testament with that prism in mind rather than an institutional prism. Guess what? This ministry and our family is self-supporting, okay? And if you don't like something I say and you take your ball and go home, this ministry goes on. But home fellowship grows because here's the power of it. You know, and I've done this. You know, I've put my arm around somebody and said, you know, brother, I love you, okay? I love you, but we're not going to disagree on this. You know, you just can't get past this contention. Bless your heart, because we're not under the authority of the church. Brother, start your own home fellowship, okay? Just start your own home fellowship. All right? And the beauty of that is a lot of times division will help the movement overall grow, because, you know, that brother goes, he starts his own home fellowship, and you got that group over there, and you got us over here. By and by, as time goes on, one group sees where they were wrong. You know, you continue learning, and guess what? Those groups that are now both bigger come together. So, you know, in home fellowships, that's where it works. But in a home fellowship network, which, by the way, is a church and a home, you are absolutely free, okay? You are absolutely free to preach and teach anything that you think is the truth and your convictions, okay? So, okay, so, let me see, we got that, and then we've got some comments up here, and then I'll read for 15 minutes, okay? All right. Paul. Let's see. Light. Might do that. Let's try this, and then I'll get into a little bit of reading today. Okay. Oh, and then the rest of Andy's comment. I wonder how many other first century apostolic and laity writings there were that were expunged from canon because it went against church orthodoxy. I don't know, but I could add to that question by asking how many of the apostles had 401k or the like, or, were supported by, the church. There's a lot of, try reading the book of Acts from the viewpoint of how your own family functions and not an institutional top-down authority prism. Try it sometimes, okay? And see how presuppositions can, really warp the way we actually see things that we read plainly. So tomorrow, I want to bring that point up about presuppositions, and I'll be adding something tomorrow. I'm not going to do it today. Let's get into a little bit of reading here, okay? And one more meme that I posted today. All churches claim God's salvific authority on earth to forgive sins. We choose one according to the theological formula that we prefer, okay? But what if Christ actually came to end sin? All right? So like church necessarily has to be against the idea that Christ came to end sin. Okay? Or there's absolutely no need for the church institution. Well, Paul, how did Christ come to end sin? You mean Christ came to end sin, not just cover it? Right. Well, how did he do that? It's in the book, and we'll get to it and expound on it further. Also, Andy and I did a weekend seminar on justification by new birth versus justification by faith, the church soteriological gospel. Maybe Andy will post that or something. Okay, so with our remaining time, we'll do some reading. We're still in the introduction of the church lie, okay? And let me get a quick drink here, all right? Okay, thank you. We'll just kind of set that there. All right, so where were we yesterday? We're on page 9, and I'm going to start with leaving off on page 9. We left off with the fact that church error in orthodoxy is very elementary, okay? In fact of the matter is, Protestant church orthodoxy is really the direct antithesis of what the Apostle Paul spent his whole ministry fighting against. All right. Second paragraph, page 9. Okay. The secular world rightly assesses those of the church stripe as egregiously illogical and naive. Furthermore, church orthodoxy, when seen for what it is, befuddles one that is even taken seriously as truth, much less endowed with gargantuan infrastructure and holy folklore. Indeed, church orthodoxy is built upon utter nonsense that constantly contradicts the plain sense of Scripture in God-given common sense. Nevertheless, apparently, something sounded good in the beginning while establishing a mental prism that people begin to see all reality through, and we're going to expound on that tomorrow. We can read our Bibles through such a lens and think it agrees with the church. Now, that isn't what the Bible is saying at all. And you know what I'm going to talk about tomorrow? I have to go back to school at some point because I want to. Susan and I are going to take some classes on philosophy together. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back to school and take algebra. Okay? Because I'm going to use algebra tomorrow to make this point that was made in page 9 of this book. How we read things through prisms. Okay? Most Christians confess that the Bible is hard for them to understand, or they do not understand it at all. Listen to this. Most Christians confess that the Bible is hard for them to understand, or that they do not understand it at all. This is always not confusing. Okay, what am I talking about here? What am I talking about here? The Pope has all authority, right? Okay, and I forget the fancy Catholic term for it. Irregardless of the fact that plainly popes over the years have said things blatantly contradictory to the Bible, what will Catholics in our day say? It's in the Bible. They'll still claim to this day in everyday conversation that what the Pope says is in the Bible. Well, how's that? Because the Pope says that's what it says. Okay? Now, full stop. Protestants are guilty of the exact same thing. Okay? I want to concede that easily. Now, most Christians confess that the Bible is hard for them to understand, or they do not understand it at all. Okay? This is because church presuppositions contradict what the Bible is saying overall. Most Christians carry their Bible as a token statement while relying entirely on the pastor or elders for truth. Okay? Yeah. Now, when I was a Protestant, I was asked to visit a Catholic church with some of my friends, and when I came, I brought my Bible with me. And boy, I was looked at. I mean, everybody, pretty large Catholic church, people were looking at me like I was a freak because I was actually carrying a Bible. Okay, well, take heart, Catholics. The only difference between you and a Protestant, okay, is Protestants only carry their Bibles. Okay? Whether it's a father or a pastor or a pope, okay, they're all telling you, whether Catholic or Protestant, what your Bible says. Okay? And even though it contradicts your God-given common sense, it doesn't make any difference. It's an authority issue. Okay? Let me see here. So, full stop, again, the reason Protestants have such a difficulty understanding their Bibles, okay, and you hear this testimony over and over and over again from church-going Protestants, okay, that the Bible is deep, too hard to understand, blah, blah, blah. What makes the Bible confusing and contradictory and a mystery and this, that, the other is because of the orthodoxy or the prism that they're reading their Bible through. They're reading their Bible, okay, through a certain prism, primarily in regard to soteriology, a single prism. The Bible is the Bible, sin is sin, blah, 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 single perspective on this stuff. And yes, unless you understand Romans 8:2, all right, the Bible is going to be total confusion from beginning to end. Okay? That's just a fact. Regarding its propaganda, moving on down the page now. Regarding its propaganda, It points to its Western pedigree that is supposedly immune from mass deception. Stop right there. And this is the problem with reading this book, okay? Because if I don't say so myself, and I'm sorry that I am, let's think about this. And I go on to expound to it, so I'm going to read on. But regarding its propaganda, that is the church, it points to a Western pedigree that is supposedly immune from mass deception. That's our mentality in the West. We're not like those crazy Easterners and Japanese that have all them Buddhist temples and everything. Okay? Intellectually and culturally, we're like beyond that. Okay? This is an arrogant mindset in the face of documented history. And it so is. We need to look no further than Germany and its Nazi terror. Germany has always been the epicenter of Western intellect, but in no wise lacking in a history given to absurd mysticism and superstition. Please read and look into Susan's stuff in our yearly conferences regarding the Puritans. Okay? Go to tank.online to our ministry hub and look for the links of the archives, our conference archives, and somewhere in there, Susan taught a whole series on the Puritans, and they came from Europe, right out of the beginning of the Enlightenment era. Whoa, talking about superstition. You ever heard of the Salem witch trials? And the goofiness and the insanity that was going on in that deal? Okay? In Western culture, in no wise has ever been lacking in absurd mysticism and superstition. Yet, a major branch of the church, Protestantism, points to this pedigree as a credential beyond reproach. So true. And such a lie. A second notable bit of propaganda is the idea that church is the product of liberal Bible interpretation. Okay? Alright? Let me read that again. A second notable bit of propaganda is the idea that the church is the product of liberal Bible. And we're going to leave off with that and begin to expand on this last paragraph of the 9th page of the introduction tomorrow, because that subject right there is just too rich. What most church-going Protestants believe, as well as Catholics the same way, is that the Protestant Reformation was begun by some guy named Martin Luther just